A unanimous Supreme Court decision just shook the foundation of how police can search your car during traffic stops. And if you own a firearm, this changes everything about your Fourth Amendment rights, starting right now. What 9 justices agreed on in a single ruling could either protect you from illegal searches or give police a brand new reason to go through your vehicle. And the answer depends on one critical detail most gun owners don't know. Before we dive in, do me one favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Why? Because 90% of gun owners miss critical legal updates like this, and I don't want you to be one of them. This ruling affects every single person who carries a firearm in their vehicle, and if you don't understand it, you could accidentally give up rights you didn't even know you had. So here's what just happened. The Supreme Court handed down a 9-0 decision in a case that started as a simple traffic stop, but ended up redefining the relationship between your Second Amendment right to carry and your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches. When all 9 justices agree on something, you know it's either really obvious or really important, and in this case it's both. The case is called United States versus Chatman, and while that name might not mean anything to you right now, trust me, it's about to become the most important case name you learn this year. Let me paint you a picture of how this started. A driver gets pulled over for a broken taillight. Normal traffic stop, right? The officer walks up, asks for license and registration, and during the conversation, the driver mentions he has a concealed carry permit. Now here's where things get interesting. In some states, you're legally required to inform an officer if you're carrying. In other states, you don't have to say anything unless asked directly. This driver was in a duty to inform state, so he did everything right. He told the officer about his permit and disclosed that he had a legally owned handgun in the glove box. The officer thanked him for the information, ran his permit through the system, confirmed everything was valid, and then said these exact words. "Since you have a gun in the car, I'm going to need to search the vehicle for officer safety." And that's where this whole case exploded. The driver said, "No, I don't consent to a search. I have a valid permit, the gun is legally owned, and there's no probable cause." The officer searched anyway, found nothing illegal related to the gun, but discovered a small amount of a controlled substance in the trunk. The driver was arrested, charged, and his lawyer immediately filed to suppress the evidence, arguing the search violated the Fourth Amendment. Now this is the part that shocked me when I first read the case details. The lower courts were split down the middle. Some judges said the presence of a legal firearm with a valid permit creates reasonable suspicion for a search. Other judges said that's completely unconstitutional because you can't punish someone for exercising a legal right. Think about that logic for a second. If simply having a legal gun gives police automatic authority to search your car, then your Second Amendment right actually strips away your Fourth Amendment protection. That's like saying because you exercised your right to free speech, police can now search your house without a warrant. It makes no sense, right? If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you will learn in my next video about the 5 words that protect you when cops ask about your gun. Subscribe so you don't miss it. So, the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and here's what the 9 justices decided. They ruled that the mere presence of a legal firearm possessed by someone with a valid concealed carry permit does not by itself create reasonable suspicion or probable cause for a vehicle search. Now let me say that again in plain English. If you have a legal gun and a valid permit, police cannot use that fact alone as justification to search your car. This is huge because it protects your Fourth Amendment rights while you're exercising your Second Amendment rights. But here's the crazy part, and this is where most news coverage gets it wrong. The ruling doesn't mean police can never search your car if you have a gun. It means they need additional articulable facts beyond just the gun itself. The court laid out a super clear test. Officers must point to specific and articulable facts that create reasonable suspicion of criminal activity separate from the lawful possession of the firearm. So what does that actually look like in real life? Let me break this down for you with some examples. Scenario 1. You get pulled over. You inform the officer you have a concealed carry permit and a gun in the center console. The officer verifies your permit is valid. Can he search your car just because of the gun? No. The Supreme Court just said that's unconstitutional. Scenario 2. Same situation. But this time when the officer walks up, he smells marijuana coming from the car. Can he search now? Yes, because now there's probable cause of a different crime unrelated to the gun. The gun didn't create the probable cause. The smell of marijuana did. Scenario 3. And this is where it gets tricky. You inform the officer about your gun. He runs your permit. And then he says your hands are shaking, you're acting nervous, and you keep looking back at the trunk. Can he search based on that? This is the gray area the court addressed. Nervousness alone is not enough because lots of law-abiding people get nervous around police. That's normal. But if the officer can point to multiple specific behaviors that suggest criminal activity beyond normal nervousness, that might create reasonable suspicion. The key word is specific. The officer has to articulate exactly what behavior suggests what crime. Here's what most people get wrong, and this is critical. The ruling doesn't eliminate officer safety searches during traffic stops. If an officer has reasonable belief that you're dangerous and might access a weapon to harm them, they can still secure the weapon temporarily. But that's different from searching your entire vehicle for evidence. Taking your gun and setting it on the trunk while they run your information, that's still allowed for officer safety. Going through your glove box, center console, and trunk looking for contraband, that requires probable cause of a crime. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney for your specific situation. Every traffic stop is different, and state laws vary wildly on how this plays out in practice. Hey, 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the 50,000 gun owners who get these updates first. Click subscribe. Let me explain why this matters so much more than you might think. Before this ruling, there was a massive patchwork of conflicting rules across the country. In some jurisdictions, informing an officer about your legal firearm was basically giving them permission to search. In other places, courts protected your rights, but the rules were unclear. This created a nightmare scenario where doing the right thing, being honest about your legal gun, could result in your car being torn apart on the side of the road. Gun owners were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Don't inform the officer and risk charges for failure to disclose, or inform them and potentially give up your Fourth Amendment rights. This Supreme Court ruling creates a uniform national standard. It says across all 50 states, a legal gun with a valid permit cannot be the sole justification for a search. This protects millions of concealed carry permit holders from unconstitutional searches, while still giving police the tools they need to investigate actual criminal activity. It's a win for gun rights and a win for civil liberties at the same time, which is why all 9 justices agreed. But here's the part nobody's talking about, and this is where you need to pay close attention. This ruling also creates new responsibilities for gun owners. You need to know your state's laws about duty to inform, you need to keep your permit valid and up to date, and you need to understand how to interact with police during a traffic stop when you're carrying. Because here's the thing, if you don't have a valid permit, this ruling doesn't protect you. If your gun isn't legal, this ruling doesn't protect you. This decision specifically protects lawful gun owners who are following the rules. If you're carrying without a permit in a state that requires one, police absolutely can use that as probable cause to search, because now you're committing a crime. Let me give you a hypothetical example to explain this. Imagine you're driving through a state that requires a concealed carry permit, but you're from a constitutional carry state where permits aren't required. You get pulled over and inform the officer you have a gun. The officer runs your information and discovers you don't have a permit valid in his state. Can he search your car now? Yes, because you're potentially committing the crime of carrying without a license. The gun itself might be legal, but your possession of it without the proper permit creates probable cause. This is why knowing reciprocity laws is absolutely critical if you travel with your firearm. Now, this is where it gets interesting for the future. This ruling opens the door for challenges to other gun-related search policies. Think about red flag laws and how they authorize searches. Think about how police handle traffic stops in constitutional carry states versus permit states. This decision creates precedent that could reshape those areas too. Legal experts are already predicting a wave of cases citing Chatman to challenge searches that happened before this ruling came down. If you were searched solely because you had a legal gun and valid permit, and that search led to charges, your lawyer needs to know about this case immediately. Here's another critical piece most people miss. This ruling affects how you should handle traffic stops going forward. If an officer asks to search your vehicle after you've informed them about your legal firearm and valid permit, you now have Supreme Court backing to politely decline. You can say something like, "Officer, I respectfully do not consent to a search. I have a valid permit, and I'm not engaged in any criminal activity." You're not being difficult. You're exercising your constitutional rights that the Supreme Court just reinforced. But here's the key. Stay calm, be respectful, and document everything if possible. This information could literally expire after January 2026. Subscribe now because the next video explains exactly what you need to do before that deadline hits. Let's talk about what this means for different types of gun owners. If you're a concealed carry permit holder who carries daily, this ruling gives you stronger legal protection during traffic stops than you had last month. If you're in a constitutional carry state and you don't have a permit, this ruling is less protective because part of the court's reasoning relied on the permit system as evidence of lawful possession. This might actually be an argument for getting a permit, even if your state doesn't require one, because it provides documentation that you're a lawful gun owner. If you transport firearms in your vehicle for hunting or range trips, this ruling still applies. The key is whether your possession is legal under state and federal law. Here's something that surprised me about this case. The court specifically addressed the argument that guns are inherently dangerous and therefore justify searches. They rejected that argument completely. The majority opinion stated that millions of Americans lawfully own and carry firearms every day, and the mere presence of a legal gun cannot be treated as suspicious simply because guns can be dangerous. This is actually a huge win for normalizing gun ownership in the eyes of the law. The court is saying that legal gun owners are not presumptively dangerous just because they own guns. But wait, there's something even more important buried in the opinion. The court also addressed how this ruling interacts with state laws about storing firearms in vehicles. Some states require guns to be in locked containers or specific parts of the vehicle. The court clarified that if you're violating those storage laws, that's a separate issue. The ruling protects you when you're following all applicable laws. It doesn't give you a free pass to violate state regulations about how guns must be transported. This is why you absolutely must know the specific laws in every state you drive through with a firearm. Let me give you the bottom line on what you need to do right now. First, verify your concealed carry permit is current and valid. Second, research the gun laws in every state you travel through, especially duty to inform laws. Third, understand that this ruling protects lawful behavior, so make sure everything about your gun ownership is completely legal. Fourth, if you're ever in a situation where an officer wants to search your vehicle solely because you have a legal gun, you now have constitutional grounds to decline, but do it respectfully. Fifth, document your interactions with police if possible, because if your rights are violated, this ruling gives you strong grounds for a lawsuit or to suppress evidence. Here's the timeline you need to understand. This ruling was issued in late 2025 and takes effect immediately. But some states might try to work around it with new laws or policies. You need to stay informed about how your state responds. Some police departments are already updating their training to comply with this decision. Others might not catch up for months. That's why knowing your rights is your responsibility. You can't assume every officer on the street has read this decision yet. One more thing that's absolutely critical. This ruling only applies to vehicle searches during traffic stops. It doesn't affect searches of your home, searches with a warrant, or searches at borders and airports. Those all have different rules. Don't assume this case protects you in those situations because it doesn't. The court was very specific that they were only addressing vehicle searches during routine traffic stops where the person has a legal firearm and valid permit. So here's what the Supreme Court just told us in this 9-0 decision. Your Second Amendment rights and your Fourth Amendment rights can coexist. You don't have to give up one to exercise the other. Legal gun owners with valid permits are not automatically suspicious. Police need real probable cause of actual criminal activity to search your vehicle, not just the presence of a legal gun. This is one of the strongest protections for gun owners the Supreme Court has handed down in years, and it happened unanimously. Here's your key takeaway. If you're a lawful gun owner with a valid permit, the Supreme Court just backed your right to carry without automatically subjecting yourself to vehicle searches. Know your rights, follow the law, and understand that this decision protects people who do everything legally. The 9 justices agreed that the Constitution protects both your right to bear arms and your right to be free from unreasonable searches at the same time. Look, I spent hours researching this stuff, so you don't have to. The least you can do is hit subscribe to support the channel. Deal? Because laws like this don't change every day, but when they do, you need to know about it immediately. Make sure you're subscribed, so you catch the next video where I break down exactly what to say and what not to say during a traffic stop when you're carrying. Final legal disclaimer in plain terms. I'm not your lawyer. This is not legal advice, and every situation is unique. If you're facing criminal charges or dealing with a specific legal issue, hire an attorney in your jurisdiction who can give you advice tailored to your exact circumstances. This video is for educational purposes to help you understand a major Supreme Court decision that affects gun owners nationwide. Stay safe, stay legal, and stay informed.